The idea of meritocracy, that you advance in life through merit and merit alone, is an old idea. As an ideal, it is wonderful, but used as a description of the world, it is highly questionable. After all, we see incompetent people in leadership positions all the time, and we wonder, how is it that they came to be there? But might it be possible that merit is the determining factor after all? One of the biggest proponents of meritocracy in recent memory is the self-help guru Jordan Peterson and his idea of hierarchies of competence. In his book 12 Rules for Life, Peterson talks about lobsters and how the most powerful lobster will dominate a given territory, gaining disproportionate advantages in life compared with his less powerful peers. He then asserts that this is an inherent quality of hierarchies which emerge naturally. Quote, "The majority of scientific papers are published by a very small group of scientists. A tiny proportion of musicians produce almost all the recorded commercial music. Just a handful of authors sell all the books." End quote. And in his public appearances, Peterson frequently states something like this.
Work. So who gets ahead? Smart people who work hard. Now, that doesn't account for every bit of the difference between people in terms of their hierarchical structure, because hierarchies aren't perfect, they're corrupt. People get to the top sometimes because they're psychopathic, although, believe me, a hell of a lot less than you think. Because a psychopath has to keep moving from place to place, because once he reveals himself as deceitful and untrustworthy, he has to go find new suckers to fleece. So the idea that, there's no distinction between a CEO and a psychopath, it's like, that's only made by someone who A, knows nothing about psychopaths, B, knows nothing about CEOs, and C, has something fundamental against the entire capitalist structure, because it's simply not true. Corrupt, sometimes, greedy, sometimes, short-sighted, sometimes running companies that are doing their best to auger themselves into the ground, and so, it's bad people running a dying organization. But generally speaking, it's not the case. Our hierarchies of competence are reasonably functional, and not only are they functional, they're valuable. We need to know who the competent people are, and we need to reward them, and even more importantly,
The goal of presenting the hierarchy of competence model is to encourage people who are struggling to improve themselves and thereby increase their probability for success. This can be useful to foster growth in individual people, but when accepted as the state of the world, it can do great harm as it obliterates any reason to change the existing order. So let's look at a couple of counterexamples to the idea of hierarchies of competence. In Susan Cain's book, Quiet, The Power of Introversion in a World That Can't Stop Talking, she relates the experience of Asian Americans working for American companies. Many reported feeling overlooked, and some even took jobs in China, where their talents were better appreciated, commuting between their homes in America and their jobs in Shanghai. The reason why they were being overlooked was their humility and unassertiveness. When doing business presentations, they would simply make their point and get on with it. However, what was expected was not well thought out points, but rather a show and dance designed primarily to entertain. Thus, people are promoted not based on the merit of the work they carry out, but on their talents as presenters. Peterson himself has raised a similar issue in the Cathy Newman interview when discussing the gender pay gap. He asserted that a contributing factor of that gap would be that women on average are more agreeable than men, and less agreeable people are better at negotiating higher salaries. If this is indeed true, then it undermines the notions of competence hierarchies, as personality becomes an interfering factor. If we were to address these issues in Peterson's own terms, we could say that the wrong attributes were being placed higher on the hierarchy of value than the right attributes. The ability to present one's work was placed higher than one's ability to do one's work competently. One's ability to argue for higher pay is more important than how deserving someone is of a raise. And as we'll shortly see, we make other flawed value judgments that allow the least competent people to advance to the highest positions. In his book, Why Do Incompetent Men Become Leaders?, organizational psychologist Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic argues that we have a misconstrued perception of what makes someone competent. He writes that much of this work revolves around making existing leaders less ineffective and preventing incompetent leaders from assuming authority positions in the first place. Quote, "There is a world of difference between the personality traits and behaviors it takes to be chosen as a leader, and the traits and skills you need to be able to lead effectively." End quote. A significant reason as to why such a mismatch exists is that we overvalue confidence. As Chamorro-Premuzic explains, competence denotes one's ability, whereas confidence denotes one's belief in one's ability. Sadly, a wide range of experiments have found that there is less than a 10% overlap between how smart people think they are and how smart they actually are. Because we place such great value on confidence, we frequently promote people into leadership positions who have a belief in themselves that is completely disproportionate to their actual ability. We promote people based on confidence, yet there is no factual relationship between confidence and competence. On the contrary, there is a factual relationship between competence and self-doubt. Someone who doubts themselves will inherently try harder and be more thorough because they doubt that they are good enough. An overconfident person, however, might make a minimal effort and confidently assume that what they have done is more than good enough, and leave it at that. As Chamorro-Premuzic explains, what allows people to get away with being incompetent in such a manner is the fact that overconfidence projects an aura of success and invincibility that breed real success simply because it leads other people to believe it will. In other words, the hierarchy of who is the most confident is placed higher than the hierarchy of who is more competent, meaning that there is a mismatch in the hierarchy of what we value in a leader. Now, regarding Peterson's claim that an equation between CEOs and psychopaths is very wrong, Chamorro-Premuzic writes that though estimates of psychopathy in senior management vary, the lower estimates still put psychopathy about 4 times more common in senior management compared with the regular population. The highest estimates, however, put psychopathy as 20 times more common than in the general population. And when looking at narcissism, we see that narcissistic traits are actually advantageous for people who want to become leaders. Some studies show that the higher a person's narcissism score is, the more likely they are to become a leader, even after accounting for factors like gender, self-esteem, and major personality traits like extroversion and curiosity. Not only that, but Chamorro-Premuzic argues that our very perception of leadership inherently attracts and breeds narcissists. Quote, "One thing is certain. If your strategy for attracting people into leadership roles is to offer lucrative compensation packages, bestow fancy titles, and celebrate leadership as a benchmark of individual career success, you will inevitably end up with a lot of narcissists in charge." End quote. Furthermore, though men are more likely to exhibit narcissistic traits, the differences between the genders have been declining as women are frequently told they have to imitate the behavior of men in order to get ahead in a male-dominated world. What allows narcissists and psychopaths to succeed is exactly their grandiose self-image. In job interviews, they appear confident and charismatic, but their subordinates experience them as toxic, bullying, and tyrannical. This prevalence of psychopathy and narcissism may explain why, quote, 75% of people quit their jobs because of their direct line manager, and why, quote, 65% of Americans say that they would rather change their boss than get a pay raise. According to Chamorro-Premuzic, what we need to do in order to get better leaders is to change what values we use to promote leaders. Qualities stereotypically associated with femininity, such as agreeableness, humility, cooperation, and self-awareness, tend to create better work environment than traditionally masculine qualities of assertiveness and confidence. A leader who listens to their subordinates and ensures the well-being of the team so that everyone is able to contribute to the full extent of their abilities is inherently going to do better than a leader who is domineering and tyrannical. So to conclude, as much as it would be nice to believe Peterson's assertion that if you work hard, if you show up for work earlier than everyone else and leave later, then, quote, people will notice that and begin to appreciate your hard-earned merits, end quote. And that this will help you get ahead in life because, quote, that is how such things work, end quote. The sad reality is that we don't live in a meritocracy. People who don't deserve it get ahead, whereas people who do deserve it get overlooked. If we continue to believe that our society is organized based on merit, we are inherently amputating our capacity to change it. We need to recognize the injustices of life so that we may create a better tomorrow than today. Thank you for watching this video. please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, as it really helps the channel out. I really recommend watching the TED Talk by Chamorro-Premuzic and by Susan Cain, as well as reading their respective books. Links will be found in the description, but on my part, this is all I have for you today. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.